Miss Lily Savage presents Anthea Turner.
I thought she'd have dressed up a bit, wouldn't you? The money she's on and all that.
Zoe Ball.
I wonder what's happened to Mummy.
June Brown.
Nasty that bite.
And Gabby Roslin.
Solid gold, these presumes are mine. Solid gold.
The Secrets of the Stars.
Let's have a look at them. This'll curl you there.
Only on the Lily Savage Show, tomorrow at 10 on BBC One.
Gabby Roslin was a stripper. No, I'm telling you, nobody ever believes me.
Far away in the Himalayas lies a small remote kingdom called Bhutan.
Following in the footsteps of her grandparents,
The route they took into Bhutan had seldom been travelled before by Europeans.
Joanna Lumley journeys into myth
This is, after all, Drukyul, the land of the Thunder Dragon.
with only her most essential items.
Cosmetics, you can't be without them,
This deeply spiritual land still throws up a few surprises.
I can't believe it. It's bingo.
Join Joanna Lumley in the Kingdom of the Thunder Dragon, Tuesday at 10 on BBC One.
Match of the Day follows the news and sport now on BBC One with Peter Sissons and Adam Minot.
There's been a major shock to Japan's financial system, with one of its biggest companies facing bankruptcy. If Yamaichi Securities goes under, it would be the biggest corporate collapse in Japan since World War II. The Australian rock star Michael Hutchence is found dead in a Sydney hotel room, hanged by his belt. And the All Blacks power their way to victory over England at Old Trafford. Good evening. One of Japan's biggest financial institutions, the security house Yamaichi, is facing collapse, with debts estimated at £13 billion. If, as expected, the company applies for bankruptcy before trading resumes next week, it would become Japan's biggest post-war business failure. As Juliet Hindle now reports from Tokyo, the crisis has sent shockwaves through the Japanese economy, already widely believed to be in serious trouble.
Rumours that Yamaichi Securities, Japan's fourth largest stockbroking company, was in trouble have been circulating for some time. An early morning press conference at the Ministry of Finance confirmed them.
Yamaichi has been facing severe operating conditions. They are considering a restructuring plan, and their management is now deciding how to proceed.
The Ministry of Finance said an investigation had discovered concealed debts at Yamaichi of more than £1 billion. In recent months, Yamaichi has recorded losses, and its image has been tainted by a scandal involving corporate racketeers, all of which have made the company's share price fall sharply. Yamaichi's problems are the latest and biggest sign that the Japanese economy is in trouble. Just last week, the country's 10th largest bank went under, and 2 weeks ago, Sanyo Securities filed for bankruptcy protection.
It's probably potentially the worst situation for any major economy since the 1930s.
The entire banking sector is saddled with huge bad loans, made when the economy was booming. Now few banks can afford to lend money for new investment in countries like Britain. The Japanese government is currently considering a bailout plan for the banks using taxpayers' money. Without it, the Japanese economy will continue to struggle. The continued uncertainty, including the worries about Yamaichi, has made it a bumpy ride on the Japanese stock market recently, and the yen continues to fall against other major currencies. Emergency meetings to decide the future of Yamaichi are expected to continue throughout the weekend. If it does go bankrupt on Monday, it'll be the biggest business failure in Japan since the Second World War. But many here believe more bankruptcies will follow soon. Juliet Hindle, BBC News, Tokyo.
Australian police have confirmed that the rock star Michael Hutchence was found hanging by his belt from a door in a Sydney hotel room. Detectives say they're baffled about the circumstances of the death of the lead singer of the group In Excess. His partner, the TV presenter Paula Yates, is flying to Australia tonight. Our correspondent Gary Duffy reports.
Her head concealed by a blanket, Paula Yates tonight left the Chelsea home she shared with Michael Hutchence on her way to Heathrow Airport and the long overnight flight to Australia. It's thought the couple's 16-month-old daughter is travelling with her. Hutchence had been found dead on the 5th floor of Sydney's exclusive Ritz-Carlton hotel. The discovery was made by a member of staff, and according to local reports, the rock star was hanging from a belt in his room. The body was later taken away by a hearse to a nearby mortuary. Legally prescribed drugs were also recovered by the police, who are ruling out any suggestion of a crime.
The body was found just before noon by a member of the hotel staff. The hotel room where the body was found has been secured, and crime scene investigators are completing investigations at this time. Detectives have taken into possession a leather belt for scientific examination. It would appear that there are no suspicious circumstances.
Australia's most flamboyant rock star was in Sydney at the start of a 20th anniversary tour with his band In Excess. People who spoke to him in the hours before his death say he seemed relaxed and happy. Earlier this year, he revealed he and Paula Yates were planning to marry, a move suggesting a more settled period in a life often filled with lurid headlines. His band had enjoyed huge success, with albums selling millions of copies, but in recent years sales had fallen, a waning popularity he himself acknowledged.
We all have our wilderness years, whether it's drugs, alcohol, lack of fame, whatever.
But In Excess retains substantial appeal, and amid that not unreasonable success, this is a death both his family and fans will find difficult to understand. Gary Duffy, BBC News.
A senior businessman has donated £1 million to the Labour Party, saying he doesn't expect any favours in return. Robert Earl, who runs the restaurant chain Planet Hollywood, said his personal donation was a show of support for Tony Blair. The offer comes after Labour decided to return a similar amount to the head of Formula One, Bernie Ecclestone. Police investigating the murder of the Devon schoolgirl Kate Bushell have staged the reconstruction of her last known movements. Her body was found a few hundred yards from her home on the outskirts of Exeter a week ago. Police said today she'd been indecently assaulted but not raped. Our West of England correspondent Stephen Cape reports.
It should have been a quiet evening stroll, but it was Kate Bushell's last journey. And today, a policewoman played the part of the murdered teenager. Wearing the same type of clothes, she picked up the neighbour's dog, Gemma, and set off on a route Kate may have taken. Locals on the estate watched every move as the journey led from the estate down a country lane.
Detectives can't be sure of the exact route Kate took to her death, and they're having to rely on 3 witnesses to help piece together this jigsaw.
The police say Kate was indecently assaulted at this location, but forensic tests have shown she was not raped. Detectives are now looking for a person standing by a blue van parked near the murder scene. And they want to trace a man seen running from fields onto the estate with a red stain on his sweatshirt.
Someone knows something about who has committed this crime, whether it's a friend, workmate, or a relative. Can you really live with your conscience if you do not come forward with that information?
Detectives hope that people in Exwick will now think back and think harder about anything suspicious they may have seen.
It's going to make us all think. I mean, we have been all week, but obviously, you know, it'll make us think about it deeper.
I just wish I could think of something. I mean, it's dreadful. We're so close.
Detectives say Kate's murderer may have had military training because of the way he killed her. Stephen Cape, BBC News, Exeter.
Serious divisions have emerged tonight in the United Nations Security Council over how to deal with disarming Iraq. The United States and Britain said it was up to Iraq to provide better access to the UN weapons inspectors. But Russia, France and China said the UN should be more sensitive. Today, UN weapons inspectors resumed their operations in Iraq after returning to Baghdad yesterday. The teams, including 4 Americans, were allowed to enter several suspected weapons sites. They say they didn't face any interference. The new government of the Democratic Republic of Congo, which used to be called Zaire, have enforced a nationwide clampdown on political meetings by opposition parties. Today, soldiers broke up a meeting in the country's capital, Kinshasa. It's now 6 months since the dictator President Mobutu was overthrown by rebel forces after running the country as a one-party state for 32 years. It was hoped the arrival of President Kabila would usher in a new era of political freedom, but he's been quick to ban all opposition activity. Our Africa correspondent George Alagaya has been back to the country to see how it has changed under the new regime.
The might and majesty of the Congo River are in stark contrast to the fragile lives of the millions who eke out a living on its banks. Mobutu Sese Seko may be gone, but the legacy of neglect and corruption lives on. too deep a stain to be washed away by just 5 months of a new government.
Dr. Kabamba, how are you?
The first time I met Dr. Kabamba Mbwebwe and his family was in the final days of the Mobutu regime. Then he told me how he was paid just over £1 a month. Now he has more to spend on his 6 children, about £10, but the open society he yearned for is still a distant hope.
We fought Mobutu. It was not only because we want someone else to be in his shoes, but we want really a change and a rupture from what we experienced in the past with the last regime.
Laurent Désiré Kabila, he is the new big man. This tailor used to make shirts from Mobutu cloth. Now it's Kabila's face that's on show. It's as simple as that. Power, not popularity, is the key to this new presidency. Despite his role as the country's liberator, Kabila gives the impression of being isolated, yet to build a link with the people he governs. To be fair, it's difficult to see how anything but authoritarian government could bring order to this fractured state. But there are fears that the current ban on political activity might become a habit.
I think that it is not really honest for people to say we're not allowing political activity, political freedom, when this country, what this country needs is reconstruction. I mean, political freedom is a good thing, you know, when you're living in a good apartment in Washington, D.C. or in Paris, but in a country where people barely have anything to put under their mouth, I think what we should be worrying about now is to rebuild this country and give the people of this country a chance to take their lives in their own hands.
Those who thought Laurent Kabila's presidency would mean a flowering of openness and democracy are bound to be disappointed. This government is about order and discipline where once there was corruption and license. Individual liberty and political choice are not on the agenda. George Alagaya, BBC News, Kinshasa.
An operation is underway to recover the bodies of 4 fishermen who died when the fishing boat Sapphire sank in rough seas last month. A salvage vessel has left Peterhead and rescuers hope to begin raising the wreck tomorrow. Bad weather has kept the lifting barge in port for more than a week. The Royal Yacht Britannia has sailed into her home port of Portsmouth, where she'll be decommissioned next month. It's the end of a 4-week farewell tour of Britain, during which she was seen by more than 1 million people. Her future is uncertain, but she could be turned into a conference centre, a museum, or even a hotel.
A flotilla of craft provided a spectacular welcome for Britannia as she returned to her home port for the last time.